everyone, I'm Grania and I'm going to do a quick video tutorial to show you how to use alcohol inks on silver and then how to seal it with a clear resin. This is a really lovely technique which allows you to kind of really enhance your designs with a pop of colour. Now how to apply some colour with the alcohol inks. I would always suggest you use a smaller piece to start with until you get used to using the alcohol inks. I'm going to use a card as my palette. These are plastic coated so they're not so porous. I'm going to use, this is a purple to start with, and again just tilt the bottle down, you don't need to squeeze it at all and a little drop will come out. I'm then going to use a really fine brush here. Pick some up on my brush. I'm just steadying it with my finger there. I'm going to paint it on, and you can see that they act quite like watercolours in that they kind of tend to spread and bleed into the texture. So they're quite difficult to control in that sense. So you kind of really do need to have a little play around with them to see how you get on. In between each colour I like to use a wet wipe to clean my brush, and I'm doing that really kind of quite thoroughly because you don't want it to kind of mix the colours. So far I've got a nice kind of subtle purple on there. I'm going to introduce another colour here. Let's try this. This one's cranberry. Again, a little dribble of that. Pop the lids back on in between. And then I'm just going to pick some up and I'm just going to really gently, I'm going to, ooh, can you see how that's kind of spread? Dabbing a bit of that on, down one half. I'm going to turn that round. I might do a little bit down this side too. Maybe not the whole of it. I'm going to clean my brush off again. And I'm going to go back to the purple. And just playing about really with layering the colours, kind of blending them. So I'm kind of flicking this purple out so it kind of blends a little bit with that cranberry. The inks evaporate quite quickly, so you only literally want to use a tiny bit at a time because it's just a waste otherwise really. So I'm just going to dot a bit more of this down the middle just to intensify the colour a bit. Sometimes you need to kind of pick it up and have a look in certain lights to see what's going on. Can you see I've got a nice shimmer on there? I'm going to just intensify the cranberry down this side a little bit more. Just clean my brush off again. There we go. Pick up a little bit. And I'm just going to dab it on again down this side. And I think the best thing is to experiment between applying the inks at wet ink to wet ink, and also leaving layers to dry and seeing how that works for you as well. So I'm just kind of using a clean brush now just to kind of dab a bit off. There we are. Might need to add a little bit more. So I'm just fiddling around, really playing about with the colours until I get like something that I'm happy with. And if you're not happy with it, you can just literally use a baby wipe to rub it off. They are permanent, but they're not that permanent that they won't come off with a nice kind of firm rub with a baby wipe, which is why I always seal them with a nice coat of clear resin, just to make sure that they're going to stay put onto my pieces. Okay, so that's looking better to me. I'm just going to pick it up there and see if I can show you. Can you see that? So I've got some really nice colours. You can see along the edge here I've got you know, a little bit of dribble, but I'm not going to worry about that at the moment. I'm going to leave that to dry for a couple of seconds, and then I'm going to show you how to use the resin to seal it in. Okay, pop that to one side. piece that's nicely dried now. I used an orange and a cranberry to achieve those kind of nice kind of autumny colours. It's nicely dried, so it's ready to have its top coat of UV resin to seal it in. So I'm going to use a playing card as my work surface, and I've got another one here which you can use for the resin if you wish. This is the resin I like to use. It's a UV resin, so you do need a UV lamp to cure it, to harden it. I like to squeeze a bit directly onto my piece, but if you're not brave enough to do that, then you can squeeze a bit onto another card and transfer it over with a little brush. But here we go. I'm just going to squeeze a small amount on there. Less is definitely more when you're working with the resin, because you don't want to end up in a big sticky mess. You'll also need a toothpick. And if you've got a magnifying lamp to look through as you're doing this, I really advise it. So I'm just starting by kind of dragging the resin out to the edges of my piece. Now, it won't want to run over the edge, it'll want to stop at the edge, but you do want it to go right up to that edge. Less is more, because you can always apply another coat. But I've got plenty here. So when it comes to the hole, I'm going to try and encourage the resin to kind of go around the hole and not flow into it. So I'm just gently coaxing it right up to the edge of that hole. I'm going to drag a little bit around that side. If you do fill up the hole with the resin, then don't worry about it. It can be drilled out afterwards, but obviously if you can avoid doing that, it saves you a whole other job. So just coaxing it around there. Oop, not sure if I dragged too much and went into the hole then or not, but I'll have another look. So I'm just checking. So I'm looking, I can see it's not quite at the edges. So it's really important to bring it right to the edges. The resin almost wants to kind of pull back from the edges, so you really got to make sure you drag it right to the edges, and you need to make sure you've got enough resin on your piece to be able to do that, to cover the whole thing. So sometimes by looking at it in a different light or from a different angle, you can see how far the resin's gone. So I'm just checking now, making sure I've pulled it right up to those edges, because there's nothing more annoying. It is permanent once you've got the resin on and cured. It's not easy to take it off. At this stage, if you made a big mess with the resin, you could use a baby wipe and just wipe the resin away, but it's kind of like you want to try and avoid doing that if you can. But if you're not happy with it at this stage, or you've made a big mistake or a big mess with the resin, then you can at this stage just wipe it all away and start again. Okay, so I think I'm happy enough with that. I don't know if you can see, I'm going to be a bit careful with it now because obviously the resin's still wet, but can you see the gloss, the shine on that? So I'm now going to just check the edges one more time, make sure I'm right to the edge, and then I'm going to pop it into my UV lamp to cure it. Once your pieces have been sealed with resin, you can then give them a final tidy up and a polish. So some of these ones here, the hole actually filled up with resin. I wasn't careful enough pulling the resin round, so I need to kind of obviously free up the hole. So you can use little pin vise like this to do that. I tend to go from behind and just literally twiddle it until you get all the way through. You can see the resin starting to come out there already. Obviously if you've got a Dremel or something like that with a drill bit on it, you can use that, but these little hand drills work just as well. You can see like the resin shards coming out. Oh, need to tighten that up. There we go. all the way through. So I've got a nice kind of clear hole there again. You can do that with all the pieces. The other thing I was just going to say is that if you're wanting to blend colours, then a shallow texture works well. But if you've got something with a deeper texture where you can kind of paint colours into cells or segments, that also works. So in a piece like this, for example, the top surface has been polished back so that only the colour is in the deeper cells. So you can get lots of different effects like that. Once you've drilled your hole, then you can clean up the edges. So you can see along here where the inks have kind of come over the edge slightly. I like to use just this is like an emery board. So I'm not scuffing the shininess of the surface of the resin. I'm literally just kind of rubbing any ink that's come over the side away, and you can see you get a nice kind of clear edge like so, and the same on this side. And it just gives it a nice clean, crisp finish. Then of course you're ready to pop your jump ring in. Once you've got the resin on, the Alcolinks on, you can't put any heat near it, so you need to just tension close the jump ring, and then it's ready to attach. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing all your creations.